Hello, everyone. Please let me know in the comments if you can hear me and if the image is fine. Buenas noches. All right, everything seems to be in order. Well, first of all, I want to thank Bhante Santhavihari for giving me this opportunity to lead this meditation and to be sharing some Dhamma with you this evening. So today is the Uposatha, and I'll be talking about the Uposatha a little bit later after we do our meditation. Sí, claro que hablo español. This is my first time doing a YouTube live, so I'm not used to receiving all these live feed comments. So I'll get back to the comments after the meditation, everyone, okay? Thank you for all the salutations. Well, today, let's do a little bit of a body, Upasana, right? Let's watch the body a little bit. Let's see if we're holding any tension in the body. Let's see if there's any pain or any interesting things going on in the body. So we're going to be using the body today as our meditation object, practicing Satipatthana, which is introspection, looking inside, Sati Upatthana. And we'll be using the breath as our anchor, but not limiting ourselves to the breath, So any bodily sensation that arises during the meditation, you can use it as your point of awareness. And your awareness can be very, it can be wandering. Just be aware of any sensations that arise in the body, but make sure that your attention is more focused in this foundation of mindfulness, the body. So usually what I like to do is I begin this body observation by focusing on the breath. And once I really get in touch with the feeling of the breath, how the breath is affecting the body, then I kind of let go of that breath and just watch the body in its totality. So during this time, pleasurable or unpleasurable sensations might arise, or emotions or thoughts. And if we find ourselves caught up in these things, that's fine. But as soon as we notice, we gently bring our attention back to the body. And if our mind wanders 100 times, as long as we bring our attention back to the body 100 times, then this meditation has been successful. Because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to develop a skill, right? We don't start off as masters. We don't start off as experts. And so we have to develop this skill of bringing our attention back to our object of meditation and maintaining it there for as long as we can. So it doesn't matter how many times you fall off the bike, just get back on the bike and keep riding, okay? So like all meditations, I want to make sure that everyone's seated in a comfortable position, whichever way that is for you. We all have different bodies. But please do make sure to keep your back straight. That is very important to avoid getting sleepy or bodily pains, because we'll be holding this position for about 20 minutes. So make sure that you're in a comfortable position. You can close your eyes or keep them open. But if you keep them open, just keep them like halfway open and try not to stare at the screen. You don't want to be distracted by the images on the screen. And you can start off by taking a few deep breaths just to kind of center yourself, ground yourself in the breath. So breathing in deeply, exhaling, breathing in deeply, exhaling. So we will be practicing Kayanupasana, observing the body for 20 minutes. Let's begin. So now that your mind is calm, body is relaxed, you can bless yourself with your calm mind by the great wisdom and compassion of the Buddha, the awakened one, Dhamma, his teachings, Sangha, his noble disciples. May you be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. Sabitiyo Vivanjantu Saberogo Vinasatu Mate Bhavantwanterayo Sukiti Gayuko Bhava Bhavetu Sabbe Mangelan Rakantu sabbe devata sabbe buddhanubhavena sada soti bhavantuti bhavetu sabbe mangelan rakantu sabbe devata sabbe dhammanubhavena sada soti bhavantuti bhavetu sabbe mangelan rakantu sabbe devata sabbe sanghanubhavena sada soti bhavantuti. I hope everyone had a pleasant or interesting meditation. So once again, before I start my little talk, I would like to thank Bhante again, Bhante Sudaso, and also Ayasoma, and the rest of the group at Buddhist Insights for giving me this opportunity to share Dhamma with everyone. So before I start, I'd like to pay my respects also to the Buddha. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhase. So I think many of you have been practicing since early morning. I know Bhante was sharing something this morning. So what is this Uposatha, right? Today is a day of intensive practice. So this kind of like a spiritual practice or holy day existed before the time of the Buddha. So even when we look at the suttas, we can see that other groups were also practicing the Uposatha to a certain degree or in a certain way. So the point of today is for you to be able to practice like an arahant, for you to be able to live like an arahant does, to live like a bhikkhu or bhikkhuni does, to live like a samana does. For one day, you are putting aside all these other things. You're putting aside your personal life. You're putting aside working. You're putting aside entertainment and other social things. And you're dedicating an entire day to practicing the holy life, the spiritual life. So you are doing exactly what the bhikkhunis and bhikkhus do, for one day. There's a sutta called Mula Uposatha Sutta. And in this discourse, there is a conversation between the Buddha and Visakha. And here Visakha explains how she understands the Uposatha. And she tells the Buddha how other groups are practicing the Uposatha. And then the Buddha says, well, in the Arya Dhamma, or this is the way the Aryas practice the Uposatha. So what is the way that the Aryas practice the Uposatha? The Buddha starts by saying that there's certain techniques or methods to purify the mind, that this is the proper way to practice the Uposatha. First, he starts with recollection of the Buddha. Itipiso bhagava areham samma sambuddho, and so on, right? When you reflect on the Buddha's noble qualities, the Buddha is spiritually perfect, harmoniously awake, a fully conscious behavior, attained to supreme goodness, and all the other good qualities that the Buddha has. We cannot talk about all the qualities that the Buddha has. But when you think about that, it brings some contentment to you. It brings you some relief. The mind becomes calm. So this is a way of practicing Buddha Nusati, right? Recollection of the Buddha. This is the proper way to practice the Uposatha. You could spend the whole day just thinking about the noble qualities of the Buddha. And in that way, you will be creating kusala kamma. Kusala is skillful or just good, right? Good karma, good actions, good mental actions. And by creating these wholesome or harmonious states of mind, you're practicing in the proper way. You're practicing in the way of the noble ones, the super normal ones, the Aryas. Not only that, but the Buddha says you can reflect on the Dhamma, the teachings. Svakato bhagavata Dhammo sanditiko vakaliko, and so on. We can praise the Dhamma in many ways also, so many good qualities of the Dhamma. But also when we think about the Dhamma, the teachings that lead us towards liberation, we know there's a prescription, there's a path to be free from suffering. So this also brings us some contentment. It brings us some joy, the Buddha says in the sutta. We get some happiness from reflecting about this. Then the Buddha also says that we can reflect on the Sangha. Supatipanno bhagavato, and so on. Also, Sangha has many good qualities. Knowing that there's others that have practiced in the past, that are practicing now, and that will be practicing in the future towards liberation. That there's a community of awakened beings. 4 different types of awakened beings, and 8 different aspects of those 4 different types, the 8 characters. So this also brings us some contentment, some relief, some happiness. It creates skillful state of mind, kusala kamma. This is also the proper way to practice. So this is like one paragraph that the Buddha shares in this sutta. Then next, he tells Visakha, but there's also more. There's more training that you can do. One can reflect on one's own past good actions or virtues. So on many occasions, the Buddha said that we're the heirs of our kamma. We are made from our kamma. So taking this into consideration, we can take refuge in our good actions. We can take refuge in our punya kamma, kusala kamma also. And this will bring us happiness. Reflecting on all the skillful actions that we did. So typically, we kind of do the opposite. I'll speak for myself and in my own personal experience interacting with others. We're so critical and pessimistic and negative, and we have this negative rumination that's always going on. And that doesn't lead to anything good. We just beat ourselves up and we start this kind of like perpetual cycle of being sad and angry and resentful. And that doesn't lead towards nibbana. But having a content and tranquil, peaceful, state of mind does conduce towards nibbana, does conduce towards the goal. And that's why we reflect on our previous good actions. Actually, as monks, when we go visit people right before they're about to pass away, we try to remind them of all the good actions they've done in their life to bring them some peace, because it's so important for them to have a good state of mind during the transition, because the last moment of life is it has a big impact on the next moment. So we try to remind them of all the good things that they did, like you took care of your family, you were part of the community, you listened to your parents, you studied, you worked hard, you did all these things, you helped the Sangha, you helped them, everyone. You did so many good things. So we try to find all these positive things. Why? Because we want their mind to be at peace. We want their mental pattern to change from being negative to recognizing the skillful. It is skillful to think and develop those states of mind which lead to tranquility and peace and harmony. And it's not skillful to develop those states of mind which lead to resentment, sadness, anger, and all these other unwholesome states of mind. So that's why we should reflect on our previous good actions. Instead of always reflecting on our shortcomings, on all the mistakes that we made, and blah, 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 etc. That doesn't do any good. It doesn't mean we ignore them. We should try to not make those same mistakes again and not be negligent and make a firm determination to improve in the future. But we should not ruminate on them to such an extent that it starts becoming detrimental towards us and towards others. And then the Buddha also says in the sutta that we should reflect on the devas, the celestial beings. So knowing that there are these higher states, right, these more pleasant states, also brings us some calmness. So as the Buddha will say later in the sutta, he actually tells the lay people that by practicing this method, one gets these results. And he lists all these different Brahma Viharas, all these divine dwellings, all the different levels of the devas that one can achieve by practicing in this way during the Uposatha. So knowing that our harmonious actions, knowing that our kusala kama, punya kama leads to kusala vipaka, kusala pala, this also brings us some contentment and joy. So we get some happiness and contentment from reflecting on our previous good actions, on our current actions that we're doing right now, which is keeping the Uposatha, also brings us happiness and contentment. And then thinking about the future, when we receive the results of our good actions, also brings us happiness. So we're winners in three ways. Then after this, the Buddha says that there's another way to reflect or to contemplate or to meditate during the Uposatha. And here the Buddha says, as long as there are these arahants who refrain from killing, refrain from stealing, refrain from sexual activity, and so on through the 8 precepts, this is also a good way to calm your mind, because you know that there are these beings who are not harming others. You know that there are these beings who are perfect, who are harmonious, who have escaped samsara, who have escaped all suffering by keeping these 8 precepts. And at the end of that paragraph where the 8 precepts are at, the Buddha says, this is what you are practicing during this day. This is what you should be practicing during the Uposatha, these 8 precepts. So here we can see that the Buddha is saying by keeping these 8 precepts, we are living like an arahant, at least in behavior, and refraining from doing the bad. As in one occasion, they asked the Buddha, what is the teaching of the Buddhas? What do you teach? And the very famous Sabe Papasa Akaranam Kusalasa Upasampada, Sachite Pariyodapenam Etam Buddhanusasanam, right? First part, avoid doing the unskillful. So that's what we're doing. At least we're avoiding the unskillfulness or doing the bad things, the evil things, the foolish things. In that regard, we can live like an arahant, at least in behavior. Even if our minds are going all over the place and they're completely messy, at least we can practice the non-violence or non-cruelty, the avihimsa part of the way the arahants conduct themselves. So then after this, it goes into what I was telling you about the results of the practice, that one will be reborn in these different celestial places. And that's really the benefit of keeping the Uposatha by practicing in this way. So we had reflecting on the Buddha, reflecting on the Dhamma, reflecting on the Sangha, reflecting on one's virtues or previous good actions, reflecting on the Devas, reflecting on those beings who are perfect in good conduct, the 8 precepts, and then thinking about the good results that we'll get in the next life if we keep this being reborn in a divine realm. So I hope you understood the importance of what today is about. Today is a day that we dedicate to spiritual training, to the purification of the mind, to avoiding doing the unskillful, akusala, and doing the kusala, the skillful. So I think at this time, I would like to leave it open for some questions in the live chat comments over here. I know they get very lively at times, so I'd like to dedicate the rest of the time for this. Okay, I think the first one here, Yenny, Bhante, by doing some work and reading, listening to the news today on the Uposatha day, does that make me breaking the 8 precepts? Well, it really depends on your intention, I think, right? So the Buddha said on many occasions that by karma, I mean intention. By kamma, he means cetana. So you have to really, I can't tell you, you know what you were looking at. I don't want to know what you were doing in your free time. But just be honest with yourself. Be really honest. So in the beginning of the Karaniya Metta Sutta, the Buddha tells us to be sincere, very sincere. Sakko ujuche sujuche. Be honest, be very honest with oneself. And if you notice that maybe it wasn't keeping with the Uposatha, then just make a determination. From this second on, for the rest of the day, I will try to practice to the best of my ability. And that's fine, because if you recognize that maybe it wasn't the best thing to do, you recognizing that is a step forward. So give yourself a pat on the back for recognizing if that is the case. And if it wasn't, then continue your practice and you're fine. So I'll leave it up to you. I read the news today, okay? A lot of people are confessing. That's fine. I understand lay folk take on additional precepts on Uposatha. What about the monastics? Oh, so usually like the monastics, during the full moon, actually not only during the full moon, but during days like this, they'll recite the Patimokkha. And during that Patimokkha, before the Patimokkha recitation, there's the confession, right? So there is some like Vinaya extra precepts that we kind of do, right? That we practice also. We're always keeping them, but the confession part and all these other things that the Buddha asked us to do, we're doing those during these days. Oh, so you were practicing, says Sally, my intention, I want to know what's going on with the world after 1 week. So you were on retreat, I think. Give yourself a pat on the back for being on retreat for a whole week. That's very good. You've cultivated a lot of good kamma, kusala kamma, and you can bless yourself with that good kamma. And let's avoid being too critical about ourselves too, right? We can be sincere and acknowledge if we may be deviated from the practice today, but let's try to avoid beating ourselves up. Bhante, when I practice mindfulness of breathing, I do have difficulty with my samadhi, but my sati is strong. But when I practice states of solidity and softness, I have good samadhi, but weak sati. So everyone kind of like levels up in different aspects. I don't know if some of you are gamers. So when you have a character and you're building him up, he has like agility, he has strength, he has speed. And we all develop our different qualities in different ways, just like if we're playing World of Warcraft and we're leveling up different things. So our sati might be stronger, our virya might be stronger. Different parts might be, we might not be well balanced in our different qualities. And that's okay. Just keep working on it and you'll keep leveling up. And eventually you'll reach some sort of level where everything kind of like balances off after some practice. And even if it doesn't, it's okay. As long as you keep working on it, you'll be making progress. So just keep practicing, and you're the expert in your own meditation, right? Because you're the one who's going through it. So you'll see what you need to do. If you keep practicing it, you can troubleshoot. Oh, yes, the sutta. I will write it right now. All right, what else do we have here? How do I balance the sati and samadhi? So if you have a level of samadhi, that implies that sati is well developed, right? So what might be happening is that when you might be in a very like calm or relaxed state, and it might feel like a samadhi state, and then you kind of get like drowsy, or the mind is not as bright when you're practicing what you're calling samadhi, this kind of like very tranquil kind of state. But it just might be like some other lower state of samadhi, and that's why sati is not the way it's supposed to be. So sati, when you're in samadhi, it really means that all the wholesome factors are present at that moment, right? It can go off and on all the time, but during that time, the sati should be well established, right? So really like look at your meditation and analyze, is this real sati? Like, am I completely aware? Or is this real samadhi? Am I maybe like tricking myself because I'm very comfortable and I feel a lot of pleasure? Because sometimes we get caught up on that. Some meditative experiences can be very physically comfortable and pleasurable, and mentally comfortable and pleasurable. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in samadhi, especially if we're noticing that the 7 factors of awakening are not present. Then that's our category, to like our checklist to see, okay, if I don't have these things, then I don't fulfill this definition of samadhi. So then, therefore, I'm not in samadhi. But only you know. So look in your own experience and do some troubleshooting. During my meditation, I had experienced an unsettling distraction where a woman was yelling in a microphone about COVID. I did not know if I should welcome the noise and observe it or try to shut it out. So when you're doing meditation, just do meditation. There's sounds, and that's fine, right? So there's going to be sounds, but we don't listen to them, right? So we don't get caught up in it. We recognize, oh, there's a sound, and that's it. And then we continue with our meditation. If we get caught up on it, we notice, oh, I'm caught up. I should be practicing. And you return to your practice. So I'll give you the same example that I gave earlier. Like, it doesn't matter how many times we fall off the bike, just keep getting back on the bike. And we'll get more skillful at maintaining the balance that we need to stay on the bike and to remain in our meditation. Bhante, also, what are some things we laymen and women can do in order to cultivate the energy needed to bring peace to family members who do not? So we have no control over our other people or other beings, and there's no way we can change their minds, right? We can just suggest, we can be available, we can provide resources for them when they're ready. But if they're not ready, we shouldn't try to force peace upon people. That's not going to work. People will become resentful, and it'd be counterproductive. So if people are not ready, they're not ready, and it's difficult to accept that. It can be very, it can hurt a lot, especially when it's people that you care about a lot. So just be the example for them and make yourself available and all the resources available to them. But beyond that, my own personal perspective would be is, don't try to preach or force anything or tell them anything about it. Just be the example. And if they have some intelligence, they'll ask you and they'll try to do what you're doing. Bhante, if I may, one more question. In your talk, it almost sounded as if rebirth in the higher realm could be a goal, but I was under the impression that those rebirths. Oh, good. Yeah. So we have to look at the context. He was talking to Visakha and mostly lay people at that time. So here he was telling them that this would be the goal if you practice according to these things that he was that the Buddha was explaining. There was no practice of like the higher training in this sutta. There was like no like satipatthana practice or other deeper parts of Dhamma. So the Buddha, on many occasions, especially if you read the Digha Nikaya, where he's mostly talking to like lay people, he doesn't like push people into like, awakening. He knows where their mind is at, and he gradually takes them where they needs to be. So there's a case where there was this monk who was really in love with this woman. So then the Buddha knew this because the other monks were criticizing this monk. And he grabbed the monk and he took him to this heaven. And he showed him all these beautiful nymphs, all these beautiful devas. And he told the monk, if you practice properly, I'll give you these beautiful angelic beings, these beautiful devas. And this monk was like, okay, I'm going to get to practicing. So he started practicing really hard, very seriously. And all the other monks made fun of him. They're like, oh, look, he's only practicing so he can be with those beautiful girls in the heavens. And they criticized them. But during this practice, he actually reached awakening. And then he went to the Buddha and he told the Buddha, Bhante, I release you from your promise because I've already awakened. I know I don't want those kind of things. And the Buddha said, oh, I already knew the moment that you reached it. I saw that you reached it and I wouldn't have to fulfill that promise. So the Buddha is very skillful in the way he teaches and the methods that he gives to people. So we always have to look at who he's speaking to, at what time he's speaking to them also, right? So we don't want to take things out of context. So we can read the Uposatha Sutta, and then you can see the context in which the Buddha is teaching. Bhante, you said something about it's good in 3 ways. Could you be more specific on this? Yeah, so when you do a wholesome action and it's in the past and you reflect on that wholesome action, it's good, right? Because from the past perspective, it's good now because you just did it, if you were to reflect on it while you're doing it. And then it's also good because in the future, you will get good results. So past, present, and future. In all 3 categories, it's good. That's what I meant. What is the best way to counteract the mental deception of delusion you speak of in false samadhi experience? So just one, understanding what the Buddha means by these terms like samadhi. So studying the suttas and also sharing your experiences with meditation teachers that can guide you. But ultimately, it's up to you. You have to do the practice on your own and see if these states that are being developed in the mind are skillful and are taking you in the right direction, or if you're kind of stagnated in the practice and you can't advance anymore. So if you get stagnated, you can start questioning the different states that you're experiencing or the means by which you're getting to these states. How do we adjust self-correction without blame or guilt in order to progress in meditation? So one thing to realize to avoid like blaming ourselves is that we're all going to make mistakes, and that's just the nature of things. We can't beat ourselves up over kind of like not knowing, right? We don't know. We don't have the knowledge. So we shouldn't beat ourselves up over it too much. Just recognize that it's unskillful and try to better ourselves. The problem, I think, really lies in like society and the way we grew up, where there's a big emphasis on like penance, right? Like penitentiary, going to jail, like you have to pay penance for what you've done bad. So I think that might have to do with some of the like guilt that we feel and stuff like that. So if once we start taking samaditi, the correct view and the correct intention, samasankappa, once we start incorporating this into the way we see the world and ourselves, we can free ourselves from beating ourselves up all the time. If I release an animal into the wild area that is not normally found to save its life, and it kill another being and become a problem, did I create dark karma for myself? So we can't control other people's actions or other beings' actions, right? So when you do something to help, the Buddha said, before we do it, we have to consider whether it's good for me, good for others, good for me and others. During, good for me, good for me and others. And after, we consider if it's good for me and others. If it meets all these criteria and something still happens wrong, because of whatever that other being was doing, then that's their karma, right? It isn't the nature of animals to be in danger, to attack each other. That's the way they are. And humans are the same way too, although we have some capacity to maybe like kind of modify that to some extent. But yeah, that is all on the animal. So we can't blame ourselves for trying to do something good. The being who created, the being who did the harm is the one that's responsible for it, right? As long as we didn't do something completely, foolish, like throw a tortoise into the water or something like that, So make very educated plans and actions. Oh, don't try to do anything just without understanding, because there can be consequences for it. Okay. Kevin. De nada, Kevin. Que estés bien. Yeah, so the 7 factors of awakening are a good way to verify samadhi, right? So if you look if all the previous other steps are there, and then that's a good way to see. If we're talking about like sama samadhi, then we can talk about the absence of the 5 hindrances and the factors of jhana too, right? So it's all there. The Buddha made it very clear what are the necessary conditions that need to be present for these kind of states. And we just need to become familiar with it. And then we need someone who has developed their practice a little bit further to maybe give us some guidance. So it's not just all theoretical. There's some practical aspects to it. So I think this is usually an hour long only. And I don't want to drag this out longer than it's supposed to be. So I would like to, once again, thank Bhante for this opportunity to share Dhamma. I would also like to thank Ayasoma. And also I would like for us to reflect on the skillful actions that we've done today. So by cultivating these skillful actions, let us not fall into foolish company. Let us not have foolish friends. Let us always have skillful friends, wise friends, until we attain Nibbana. So now recite it in Pali. Imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo satam samagemo hotu yaveni banapatiya. Okay. It was nice meeting everyone here today. I hope to see you in the future. Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Soma. May everyone be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. See you later.